Go ahead.
Okay, so thanks for joining our info session. My name is Bill Dai. I'm the scientific manager at the Institute of Biomedical Engineering, and joining me today is Teresa Adderley. Do you want to introduce yourself, Teresa?
Sure. Thanks, Bill. I'm Teresa. I'm the industrial program manager at BME, so I primarily work with the MEng students.
Okay, so we are a bit of a special unit in the sense that we have cross appointments in 3 different faculties. So we're primarily situated in the Faculty of Engineering, but we also have appointments with medicine and dentistry. Before we get into the crux of our presentation, this is more of a rhetorical question, is where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? A very cliche interview question, an important one for you to think about. And we assume that graduate study is not the end, the end goal for you. It's part of the journey that gets you to something better. Either you want to improve your skill set or you want to change your field. Those are all viable options. And the reason I'm asking that question is because if you look at the people who came out of our program, a lot of them have gone to a diverse set of different fields, right? It doesn't have to be in science. A lot of them have gone on to work for tech companies or consulting firms. Some, even work for the government of Canada. But there's also a big proportion of them who decide to stay in academia, either pursuing a postdoctoral fellowship or have become professors. Now, of course, I don't want you to kind of take it from us. I highly encourage you to go on to our sister website, which is discover.bme.utoronto.ca. And this is more of a editorial website / blog that where we document stories from our alumni, students, and even current students, and even sometimes prospective students. So check them out and really hear the stories from their point of view, because you may find something that's relatable to yourself. So in our institute, this information is probably more relevant to the people who are applying for the research stream. So meaning if you're pursuing a PhD or a Master's of Applied Science, we have 3 major research streams, and that's molecular engineering, cell and tissue engineering, and clinical engineering. I assume a lot of people here came from a life science background. Now, you're probably more familiar with the molecular and the cell tissue. The molecular is really anything, study of stuff that happens at the subcellular level. So that could be, delivering nanoparticles for cancer therapy or developing new imaging modalities. Or, in your case, I think this is something you're more familiar with, which is system biology. In cell and tissue engineering, this is the primary focus here is for tissue regeneration or discovering of biomaterials that aid in the healing or the full regeneration of organs. Of course, there are a lot of engineering concepts that's involved in here as well, in addition with the chemistry concepts. In clinical engineering, this is where the research discipline kind of switches gear quite a bit compared to the first 2 disciplines. In clinical engineering, the research, there's a higher chance for you as a student to work with actual patients, right? And then there's a more of a human factor involved in it. In some cases, so I'll give you an example. When you're in molecular and cell and tissue engineering, a lot of research that you do can be widely applicable to the field, right? Because you're trying to develop a better understanding of a specific concept, or you're designing a new device. Whereas in clinical engineering, based on the patient's need, what you're developing there is maybe tailored to that particular patient, themselves, right? So the kind of research is going to be very different. There's definitely pros and cons, related to each of those kind of research streams. It really depends on what your own interests are. And now I'm going to pass the torch to Teresa, who will talk more about the different programs that we have here at the Institute of Biomedical Engineering.
Thank you, Bill. So you can see from the slide, there's a lot of information on here. So I'll just highlight some of the key points. So we do have 3 programs in the Institute. We have one professional program, which is the Masters of Engineering. And this program is really, it really focuses on the design of biomedical devices. And so this is a course-based program. And then there's a 4-month internship at the end of the program. So you can see here we have some of the tuition amounts listed, and you can offset this tuition by doing your internship. They're paid internships, and the salary is typically around $10,000. Then we also have 2 research stream programs, and those are the master's, the MASc, and the PhD. So these programs are more, whereas the MEng is more for those looking for sort of a direct entry into industry, our research stream programs are for those that are more interested in independent research. So in these programs, you'll do some coursework, you'll work primarily on an independent thesis project. You can see the tuition amounts are listed here as well. And in these 2 programs, you will be supported through a stipend. So you'll be paid out of your supervisor's grant funding. And there are other ways in these 2 programs to offset your tuition as well. So in terms of what you need to apply to all of our programs, you need to submit a bunch of documents, and these are submitted online through an application portal that SGS maintains. So we ask for a statement of intent, your CV. We do ask for 3 letters of reference, and as well as your unofficial and official transcripts. If you are applying to a research stream program, we highly recommend that you seek out a potential supervisor before applying. As Bill mentioned, we do have the editorial site, discover.bme. There are some podcasts on that site that where actually Bill has interviewed different PIs to get some basically some tips for students when approaching potential supervisors. So they'll really guide you through that process and sort of outline some do's and don'ts when reaching out to professors. And just to highlight again, for any of our programs, you do not require an engineering degree to apply.
Whoops. Hey, thanks, Teresa. So I'll briefly talk about the funding information, which I know a lot of people are interested in. So I think people often ask us, like, what is different about our program? It's really hard to answer that question with just a sentence. If you're a student, and you're looking for different programs to join, I would recommend you to first look at who are the available faculty members that are in that program. And then secondly, you should probably look at the funding. Each department provide different amount of funding. Some of them make teaching assistantship mandatory, some of them are non-mandatory. And the number of years that are guaranteed funding, that also differs department from department. So definitely check out those important information, because it will affect you when you're in graduate school. So for us, the teaching assistantship, that's not mandatory. And if you do decide to do one, that's added on top of your existing stipend. Now, your stipend is not taxable because it's considered a quote unquote scholarship. Whereas teaching assistant, that's considered work, and this part is taxable. Aside from that, there are also a number of internal and external scholarships. The internal scholarship, you can really break that down into the departmental level, so institutional level or you can go to the university level. There are a number of them. Most of them usually come down to a similar number of criteria, which is your leadership capability, um, do you have a need of financial assistance? And then there's a bunch of other ones that rewards the students for their extracurricular and leadership activities. In terms of the external awards, what I mean by that, they're external to the U of T kind of sphere. So you're talking about the provincial level, the national level, the international level. Now, the popular ones that people apply to are CIHR and NSERC, mainly because of the amount of money and the prestige that's associated with getting these awards. Now, like Teresa said, we do have podcasts on our blog where we interview certain profs or even students who have won these awards in the past to kind of give you a better tip on, how do you write your application, what are the key things to look out for. So definitely check that out on our website. And of course, out of all of these external scholarship, the most prestigious one would be Vanier, and that's a $50,000 non-taxable per year for 3 years, which is highly lucrative, right? So usually people apply for these scholarships in their 4th year or in their 1st year of their graduate study. Now, you can apply your 4th year if you have worked in that lab during your undergrad years. Otherwise, it's a paradox, right? Like, how do you come up with a convincing concept / proposal when you don't even know what kind of project you will be working on? So if you had worked with a specific faculty member in the summer, let's say, you can definitely reach out to them, and you still want to continue your graduate studies with the same person. You can reach out to them and say, hey, I am drafting up this proposal for NSERC or CIHR. Do you mind having a look and help me refine this so I can help you help me, essentially, right? Because if you get funding, it's also it eases up on their finances as well. So it's in their best interest to help you with the funding. Usually, then if you're in your 1st year, you can also definitely apply for the scholarship once you get a better hold of what you will be doing for your project. So to kind of reiterate, because we do get a lot of questions in our mailboxes, but as much as you're tempted to email, I would definitely recommend checking out some of this information, because we've been doing this for a while, and the questions, 80% of the questions are the same questions. So, and that's why we aim to answer them on our website. Right. So our main website, if you have a procedural admission related questions, they're right there. Faculty information. So if you're looking for a specific faculty member and the kind of research they do, it's also on our main website. We also have a upcoming event in January called a research lab matchmaking. Just think of it as like speed dating, but for matching students up with research labs. So any faculty member who is available, who have funding, who's interested in taking on students, they should be there. And then they will be separated into one of those 3 streams. So you will be basically meeting faculty members back to back virtually. And within that 5 minutes, you basically get a feeling on who this person is. And if there is interest, then you should definitely reach out to them afterwards for more information about the kind of projects in their lab and what the lab culture is like. Excuse me. On the editorial website, you can find stuff like I've mentioned earlier, student profiles, alumni, and where they are, because this will give you an idea of, what kind of skill set can you get by coming to this department, right? To come to our institute, and whether you can leverage or how you can leverage those skill sets in different career paths. And then lastly, there are tips and tricks. So we've talked to 3 different faculty members, and we asked them like, okay, if you're reaching out to a faculty member about, I would like to join your lab, what do you put in the header? What do you put in your email? How long should the email be? Do you include your CV in there? All of that is on discover.bme.utoronto.ca. Okay, there are podcast formats. They're also transcribed. So if you really don't want to listen to them, just Control F, find the keywords, and that'll be your shortcut. So with that said, we're going to open the floor to take questions. So if you have any questions about the admission process, about our programs, or about anything that Teresa and I have mentioned early on, please feel free to ask. Sorry, should I be checking the chat for?
Yeah, if you can put, if anyone has any questions, post it in the Q&A or chat.
All right, so I got one question. The first question I got is, where can I find the research matchmaking event? Right, so if you go onto our website, which is bme.utoronto.ca, there is a main menu, and on the main menu, there's an item called prospective students. If you click on that, I believe under there should be something called events or something, or prospective events. You click on that, and then under there is a page called the research lab matchmaking. There is an application process. You got to fill in your CV and all that stuff. What we will basically do is we will send that information to our community, and any faculty who is interested, they would be there, and you'll be matched up with people from your own discipline. So the 3 I've mentioned earlier: molecular engineering, sanitation engineering, and clinical engineering. All right, so I'm going to read out the question. So the next question is, I have heard of a PhD MD program at the University of Toronto. Is this done in the biomedical engineering stream? Teresa, would you like to answer? I think you might be an expert in this.
Yeah, so definitely there are professors within our department that have MD, PhD students in their lab, but to be honest, I'm not that familiar with the application process.
I believe it's, sorry, Teresa. I believe it's actually applied through medicine. It's actually applied through the MD program. So you have to be in the MD program first, I believe. Don't quote me on this. check it out on their website, in the faculty of Temerty Faculty of Medicine website. I've definitely seen a few people who came from the MD PhD program. Our director, Warren Chen, I think he has taken on like 3 or 4 MD PhDs in the past. There are also other members, sometimes people in the hospital. So there are clinicians who run labs. They also take on MD PhDs. So it's definitely done here. Yeah. But I think other departments might also do it. So, it's not, I don't think it's exclusive to us. Any other questions? All right. I assume that is a no. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay. If there's no other questions, do you have any last minute things to say?
Join our program. I mean, to be honest, the last pitch I would make is that the research matchmaking event definitely check it out and apply. It's, in my opinion, the most time efficient way to talk to faculty members. And it's also the most time efficient way for them to meet students because you're going back to back 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, right? And then the other thing I would definitely say is if you have any question, definitely go on to Discover BME.
There's two questions actually in the chat.
Oh, right, I see them now. Okay. So the first question is, I am in second year of life science. What would you recommend I gain to be able to join the program? I'm assuming you're talking about skill set.
I mean, I can take this one, Bill. So
Sure.
if you're thinking of a research stream program, it would be great to have some research experience when you apply. So you can highlight that on your CV, but also if you are able to get one of your references that can comment on your previous research ability, that would be fantastic. So whether that's like a thesis course within your program or potentially working as a summer student in a lab, that would definitely help your application. If you're thinking about the MEng program, as I mentioned, you do not require an engineering undergrad degree, but some of our courses are sort of technically heavy. So if you do have, you know, some physics courses, even math, some programming skills, any of that would be helpful for the MEng stream.
Teresa. The next question is, what level of detail is expected from a letter of recommendation? Is just a professor acceptable, or do they need someone we've researched with? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely acceptable if you just select a professor or any professional who can comment on your ability to work, either with other people or you have, you know, research expertise. It would definitely score better if you have someone who have worked with you before or who have, you know, have supervised you before. The longer they've known you, the better it is. I mean, you know, if I know someone for 10 years, I can provide a much better recommendation, right? As opposed to I've only known this person for 4 months, right? But don't discount if the best person you can get is the person from 4 months. You know, ask them anyways, right? Because you know, it's what you got. So just make use of make best use of what the resources that you have. Teresa, do you have anything to add?
I can add just in terms of what kind of detail is expected from the referee. We do have a form that we provide them. So they're sort of given prompts as to what to comment on. So we're really guiding them in terms of what kind of questions we want answered. And because of that, the references are sort of uniform in that way, and it allows us to really narrow down on a few areas that we're interested in. And they are areas like, does this person have research experience? You know, can they work independently? Like these kind of things.
Thanks, Teresa. Next question is, how do we know whether we're better fit for a master's or a PhD? Oh boy, this is this is a hard question to answer. This is a hard question to answer because there's a lot of different factors, right? The most important thing, you know, without offering my own kind of opinion, is what do you want to get out of it? Like what, again, going back to that question, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years time, right? Try to answer that question first. And if let's say, you know, your 10-year goal is I want to be a senior project lead in Amgen leading a novel drug R&D, then you better have a PhD, right? Because they look for that kind of stuff, right? What you get out of the degree, that's a different question, but just the title, they need that title. Because if you look at anybody, if you research anybody who have who's a senior project lead in a pharma company, that's 90% of the time it's a PhD, right? If you don't see yourself doing that, okay, what else do you see? Do you want to go into consulting? PhD is not really necessary for that, but sometimes that there is still kind of like a hard cap in some companies. I've seen plenty of smart masters, or I've seen plenty of people with bachelors who are smarter than a PhD, right? So it depends on what you want to get out of that experience. So
I can also just quickly maybe add on to this. I kind of zipped through the program slide, but it's very common for students to start a master's and then switch up to a PhD. So in biomedical engineering, we allow this after about 1.5 years. You can write an exam, and then, providing your committee agrees, you can switch into the PhD program. So you don't necessarily have to make that master's versus PhD decision right away. We often have students that start in the master's, they see how their project's going, they feel out the lab that they're in, and then they make that decision later. So it's less common to have people enter directly into the PhD program.
one last thing I'll add is the PhD is a commitment, because if you lock that in, the longer you lock it in, the less likely you want to quit, right? Because when you're third year and you're like, I'm more than halfway there, so I might as well finish it, whether you like it or not. So it is a commitment, right? So you really have to really like the science, or you're like, I really want that job 10 years later, and I have to do this because there's just really no other way, right? Yeah, a lot to think about.
Any last minute questions? Anything last minute to say?
Oh, I'm good. Teresa, do you have any?
No, I would just say, thank you for joining us and for considering our programs. And, our staff, our administrators' emails are on our website. If you have questions, look through our website, reach out to us. We hope to see your applications next year.
Okay, thank you so much.